So, the earliest memory I have regarding adults talking about voting is the last presidential election. It was a debate about Kamala Harris and Trump. The viewpoint I heard was that Kamala Harris is an evil person who contradicts herself, while Trump is a businessman who could lead our nation. Now, I'm asked, have I ever seen a family member or teacher vote? And yeah, I remember stepping out of the car to deliver my sister and mom's ballot to the box in front of Kapalahana. This moment made me feel responsible as not only I was carrying out the voice of my family, but I was also altering the nation in a way. Now, this brings me to the question, if the US is afraid of people not voting, why don't they just put a fine on those who decide not to participate? Though that's just me personally asking. To understand voting today, we first need to understand where voting rights began in the United States. So, who originally had the right to vote? Well, it was primarily white men with property ownership who could vote. They must be property owners or meet other wealth qualifications, which are taxpayers. African Americans were legally prohibited from voting, along with women's rights to the same matter to be voided. Now, I would not have been able to vote in early America because I did not have enough money and I lacked property ownership titles. My family bloodline would not be able to vote because they are from Germany, being my mom's side, and Morocco, that of my dad's side, which displays they don't have US citizenship. To further elaborate, my family can't vote because my mom is a woman and my dad is dark.
Throughout American history, there have been many acts and amendments that have expanded the right to vote, being the 15th, 19th, and 26th Amendments, along with the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. In my opinion, I think the Voting Rights Act of 1965 had the biggest impact because it finally enforced the right to vote given to African Americans under the 15th Amendment. After the Civil War, African Americans were given the right to vote by the 15th Amendment, but even though they had the right to vote, it didn't necessarily ensure they could. Southern states used Jim Crow laws like poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses, and all white primaries to stop African Americans from voting. This act allowed millions of African Americans who were previously blocked by these things to finally vote. There were many movements throughout history, like the abolitionist movement, the civil rights movement, and the women's suffrage movement, that fought for the right to vote. If I could go back in time and ask someone from one of these movements a question, I'd ask, how did you find the courage to keep pushing even when you faced setbacks or even violence? I'd want to understand what kept them going, especially with leaders like Martin Luther King and Alice Paul, who endured so much hardship. Going back and thinking about it, someone my age would probably have felt angry, scared, or powerless in this time. They might have felt mad because they have the same right on paper as everyone else, but racist barriers like poll taxes or literary tests might have stopped them. They might also feel discouraged from voting, like their voice didn't matter, and scared knowing if they tried to vote, they could face threats or violence from domestic terrorist groups like the KKK. If you can't think of how it would feel to be back then, try thinking of an experience you had or saw of unfair treatment. For example, my brother used to work as an electrician, and when he was new, the people he was working with would mess with him and make him do the work they didn't want to do, even though it was their responsibility, just because he was the new guy. When he told me about this, I felt frustrated for him because he was treated unfairly by people on his worksite because of something he couldn't control. This helps me understand voting discrimination better because it showed me how unfair it feels when people are treated differently for reasons they can't control, similar to how some laws made voting more difficult for certain groups of people.
I think 18-year-olds should be allowed to vote because at that age, we're expected to handle a lot of adult responsibilities like working, paying taxes, and making big decisions that affect our future. And if laws impact us, we should have a say in them. I balance school with responsibilities like sports and extracurriculars, and I'm also involved in leadership roles such as being an Academy Ambassador, the Vice President of DECA, and the Secretary of STEM Enrichment. Managing my schedule, staying committed, and making decisions that affect my clubs shows that I can handle adult responsibilities like voting. School and extracurriculars take up a lot of my time, and my schedule can get really busy. Another challenge I face is feeling fully informed, as it is hard to find time to learn about the different candidates or effects laws can have on my life. Being able to vote online or having more early voting options would make it easier for me. Clear and informational resources about candidates and issues could also help me feel more confident to vote.
First off, the voter turnout was pretty low for young people between the 70s to '04, with a small jump for every age group during Clinton's election in '92 and Bush's election in '04. This led into a large jump in voting for Obama's '08 election. Combined with easier access to the media via the internet, the nation's problems started becoming more real to young people and caused increased voter turnout. People my age don't have enough life experience to really know what goes on in the real world. Additionally, some people, myself included, don't like that politics causes conflicts between friends where it could have otherwise been avoided. I personally think I could get along with anyone despite their political alignment, but others may not share that sentiment.
Hi, hello. I'm Tarik, and who may I be speaking with today?
My name is Jay Smith. I teach computer science at Campbell High.
All right. So, for my first question, what strategies have you worked to increase the participation of people?
I remember this question from last time. To encourage students I have in computer science to engage in the democratic process as voters. Is that what you mean?
Or you could just talk about like maybe your students you have right now for your class.
That's what I mean. Yeah, right. I just try to work in ideas of civics into and applications for what we're doing in the content of computer science and talk about how that might impact public policy and civics and overall like day-to-day life of the socio-political impacts of what we're doing in content. Yeah.
For my second question, I'd have to say, how can like schools or communities better prepare young people for voting?
Try to make sure they're understanding in the big picture of what they're doing in at this point in their lives and how that might ripple and have impact or have a context for voting and being engaged in the democratic process as citizens.
I see. So we've interviewed some other people, and we sort of had this feeling of like most young people are kind of like disconnected to like voting. Is there any way you would increase that?
I just think make sure they don't force people think of it when they can't put two and two together, but in the organic course of what we're talking about in our course content, we might talk about how these issues of being engaged as a citizen in the political debates and the political involvements with voting and understanding public policy and how that connects to what you're learning in lessons that you're naturally talking about in the courses.
But why do you even feel like they're kind of disconnected in the first place, though?
Because they don't understand how it relates to them. Really, more than half the classes here that teachers are teaching, probably kids can't connect what the actual direct course content is to their life, let alone some other third party thing about voting and being engaged in the democratic process and how you have a hand as a voter and a participating member of society and how these things change into your adulthood. We as teachers and adults and people who are mentors to you need to kind of help you connect those dots. There's lots of grown-ups you see walking around here if you go to 7-Eleven that are worse than you. Real talk. They don't know. They're worried about getting up in the morning, riding their beat-up beach cruiser with their slobby, fat, bad tattoo and their dog with 3 legs and just getting a pack of cigarettes. They don't even do it. So don't get down on yourselves. All of the world needs to make those dots connect better to help life better, right? You understand?
Yeah.
Right.
So you talked about these third parties. This brings up like my next question of like, how do you think social media or like technology affects or influences these people?
Very much does, because media always did, and social media is just another form of media. When they say there's too much money in politics, half what they're talking about is the money being paid for commercials and billboards to convince people to do something different than they were going to do otherwise. That's where creative media has an impact. People try to clown creative media as being something that's just a goofy, fun thing, but media is propaganda. It's always been an important thing. It sways people's perspectives and what they're going to do. And put that to technology, same. Now you have social media that's technology based, and you have a combination of the both, right? So yes, what people see on social media affects what their decisions are, and how they feel and think about things, right? And now you have algorithms, and people are stewing in their own echo chamber of how they feel. They don't, technology, because you're computer science, it's in the business interest of the social media platforms to reinforce something that you already know and not introduce you to new things, because they make money off you sitting online. And if you see too much that you don't agree with, you'll jump off. So they give you things to help you stew in how you already feel. And you, as a person in technology, can have a hand in guiding how that might change over your life as an adult. There are people within these companies that are trying to change them, and they're getting fired and they're having the whistle blow. These social media posts are influencing all kind of things, like big political movements and genocides, all kind of things, just based off what people are seeing and reinforcing in their heads on social media globally, not just in America.
Have you noticed any like surprising trends?
That's a big trend. You know, they're doing the social media platforms, and they were told they had to knock it off, and they did just long enough to where they didn't have to anymore. Okay. And when they didn't, you had all these crazy things happen because people congregated on social media and reinforced crazy stuff they wanted to do, and they did them with a permission structure because they thought it was something that made sense because a bunch of people are in there talking about the same stuff. Now we're getting into technology, but these things are tied. Social media and technology, all those things together. Yes, of course. I don't know if that's what you guys are wanting to find out about, but don't start me on that. Yes, of course.
All right. That'll be pretty much my questions.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Hi. So we're with Hero, and we're trying to ask some questions based on like what you think about like the voting in America right now. So first off, what is your name?
My name is Heather Gostage, your mother.
What do you do here?
I'm a psychology and sociology teacher.
Mm-hmm. What else are you?
I'm the STEAM Academy lead.
Mm-hmm. What strategies have worked to increase youth participation, like in voting?
So yes, during our advisory, they help students register, but I think some of the other strategies that could be used is, especially for social studies teachers, is to include current events in activities and provide resources for students that are like easier to digest when it comes to learning about politics and world events and stuff like that.
How can schools or committees better prepare young people to vote?
Communities?
Yeah.
Yes. Again, keeping it simple. I think a lot of students are probably overwhelmed by all of the information out there. So if we could find, young people, student-friendly information that, isn't complicated for our students to understand, and then just also like education on why it's important to vote would help students, because I think a lot of students don't see the point in voting. So, yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who feels disconnected from politics?
I would say start with just reading or watching the news daily, like even if it's just like 5 minutes a day, and then increase that time. But also, like, if you don't know anything about politics, then just doing a little bit of research on which maybe party you feel like you agree with the most or disagree with the most. But yeah, I mean, honestly, just like learn about what's going on in our world, and maybe it'll spark like some interest of like wanting to change something.
How do you think social media and technology influence young voter engagement?
Well, we all know that young people are highly influenced by media. So there's a big problem with that, because a lot of the stuff that's out there is not based on facts. And so a lot of young people don't take the time to actually fact check. So they take that information as factual. And so we have people voting on issues and policies that aren't even real. So it is. I don't think it's helping.
Um, what is one surprising trend you've noticed in young voters?
Well, you were here when I asked my students about this, and they don't care right now. And this is a senior class that are going to be 18 soon, and overwhelmingly, a big I don't really care to vote when I turn 18. It doesn't matter to me kind of answers. So, yeah, they aren't interested.
An expert told us he was surprised that younger generations thought as complexly about things as we do. This was surprising because he thought we were dumb. One expert shares that he believes social media is where the younger generation lives and where their attention is focused. Subsequently, it heavily sways younger folks' political alignment globally. No expert said anything that contrasts with any of our opinions. They came up with well-constructed ideas on how to help the youth.
Hello, this is Tark, and who may I be speaking with today?
Hi, my name is John Albert.
So I got a clue a few questions about voting, and my first one will be is what is one thing you wish you knew about voting before today?
What I wish I knew about voting was, I guess, more information about like the candidates I'm voting for and like their background, their goals, their vision for, just the community, or just like for everything that affects my life, which is like the economy and everything like that. So I just want to see like their vision, just more information generally about the candidates is what I'm basically missing.
I see. So it seems like there may be some things maybe like stopping you from learning, and that brings up like this question of like what barriers might prevent you from voting.
What I say barriers might prevent me from voting, and it is my age, because not like in a sense where, oh, I'm too young to vote. It's more so like the maturity and the experience wise, because I don't have like the experience as of like an adult or someone that's older than me that's like working, has a job, like all the like the taxes affecting me and something like that, or just jobs in general that affecting me because I'm still in school, so it's like it's not affecting me too much, especially since I'm still in high school, not college wise. So I guess like the lack of experience I have from direct, like direct, like effects on me is like preventing me from giving a strong opinion on voting.
Yeah, okay. So what issues matter the most to you that voting could influence?
What matters the most from what I see it right now is more so the economy and like the economic status, because it's like money drives the world, right? So it's like getting a job, making money, how much taxes you're paying, and like your like the minimum income and all that stuff, and like everything that involves around the economy is basically what I say is the most important, like one of the more important factors to consider when voting, personally.
Huh. So do you feel informed about elections and the candidates?
Um, for a lack of a better term, no, not really, just because I've sort of been, I want to say avoiding, but more so not paying much attention to, like, I guess the politics and all the voting stuff that's happening, especially recently. It's because I don't want it to, like, I guess, I don't want to put a strong opinion in or just like put out an opinion in general without knowing everything or like knowing what affects me directly. Since what I said, what I like what I said previously, like nothing much is affecting me directly. It could be affecting people around me that is affecting me, but I can't really sense the impact without it affecting me directly. So it's that sort of a sense where it's like, you know, it's like, yeah, it's like I get have a lack of information just because I don't really take it in well.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Like you want to be in like that
Mhm.
political like warfare and that type of stuff. So I see
I
you
wouldn't say
try to
political
avoid that.
warfare, but like harsh debate. I like more like debate wise. I like to stay in a neutral, like I'm more so uninvolved with it. I want to stay outside of it.
Yeah, okay, so it's
I'll
like
get into it when I feel like I need to, or like when it's like affecting me personally. Then yeah, I'll get into it. No problems. But like since I have no standby on it. So
oh, so you're like fine where you are right now. Okay, yeah.
uh for now, yeah.
So
you haven't participated in any like super official stuff yet, but have you participated in any like school or community projects related to voting?
Um, Recently there was like an advisory activity where we registered to vote, or like registered, yeah, registered to vote since we're the age of 16, which I guess is the voting age, I think. If I correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, that we had that little activity, and the only activity prior to that that I remember is like a little like a small activity in second grade where we had like a little fake voting booth in our classroom, and we were like, it was basically to play out a scenario of actual voting, and I think it was for the 2017 election, and it had like all like the president, the vice president, senators, and like representatives. We had to like vote for all that stuff. Like I don't think that counted. Like, of course our votes didn't count, but it was like a little mock activity.
Oh, I see. So you learned like how to navigate through that? Like what would you say you mainly
I say
learned from
so.
the activity?
What I learned, I guess, is the experience, and yes, like how to navigate through the voting experience. And I guess the purpose of the activity was to introduce us to it, especially because it was during election season, so it was like a perfect opportunity to bring up that activity. And I guess it did its job well, because even throughout the years, like from second grade till now, I still remember it. So it did its job.
Well, that'll be pretty much all my questions. Thank you, John, for answering.
Yeah, thank you. No, thank you for having me.
All
Hi.
right. Hello. My name is
Hello.
Tarik.
I'm Bernhard.
Okay, so I got a question for you.
Mhm.
Um, what is one thing you wish you knew about voting today
One thing I wish I knew
or before today?
before today,
Yeah.
it's really knowing what I want to decide for my candidates, like who I want to vote for, like knowing what their promises are and how, like, in what ways I could decide which one is my preference.
Oh, I see. Okay. Um, what barriers do you think prevent you from voting?
My age, certainly, and knowing anything about and then anything about the candidates I'm voting for.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, what issues you think most matter to you when voting could influence? You know what I mean? Or you want me to
Right
rephrase?
now, mostly economy and also a little bit of social freedom in a way. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. So, do you feel informed about the elections and candidates?
Not really. A lot of the time, I have to get my information off like actually searching it up. But if my normal information just comes from like regular media like YouTube or Instagram.
Okay. So, have you ever participated in any like school or community projects?
Not really. Like most of the time where I do vote, it's in like small scenarios where I still don't know anything about the candidates. And like even if I do, it's based off like how I know them personally.
Okay. Well, that'll be all my questions. Thank you for answering.
Thank you.
I chose John Albert Ching because he has already taken U.S. history over the summer. Therefore, his understanding of the provided questions should be without a doubt comprehensible. In addition of John, a student named Bernhard Ronkel was provided the same questions. This man is currently taking AP US History, in which detailed historical knowledge can contribute to elaborate answers. Now, looking at the results from my survey and interview, one may see Bernhard say, "How does my vote impact the country?" This stood out to me because this man is taking AP US history and doesn't grasp the understanding of the power he has. After asking my peers 5 questions, I understood they don't know much about voting, despite completing US history or still in the process of completing it, implying a fresh memory of the following. This brings me to conclude that something has to change where democratic participation has to increase. For example, make people who refuse to vote pay a fine.
One issue I personally care about is education. Voting can affect this because officials decide how much funding schools get and what programs are supported. A recent moment when I realized this was last year, when our DECA chapter's ability to travel and compete depended on school funding and permission. This showed me how much control adults still have over opportunities that matter to us. I think young people have more influence than before because of social media. For example, I've seen songs go viral or games become popular just because people posted them on social media.
So, my family believes that voting provides us the opportunity to make our voice heard in order to direct the country towards personal belief inspiring individualism, which displays our democratic system rather than the typical dictatorship. Though, honestly, I'd rather spread propaganda than merely waste my time on voting if I really want my way. I believe this is much more effective. If I were to vote for the first time, I would feel empty like a bot doing its line of work, in my personal opinion. Though, I remember there was a saying, so I can't remember a specific moment rather than a collective amount of events such as being unable to refuse going on hikes with my dad. This indicates in the long run my vote doesn't matter. However, in the process of refusal, I was able to make a compromise, which would be able to acquire McDonald's afterwards. So when you compare this to a democratic system, sure, you could vote, but I believe there can be compromises made along the way.
I think seeing how the cost of everything has gone up and changed so much over the last 5 years has made me realize that voting affects my life more than I originally thought. When the cost of gas, groceries, and basically everything else rises, it reminds me that the people that are elected make decisions that directly shape our economy. One thing I'm worried about is not being well informed enough before I vote and making the wrong choice and regretting it later. I'm also concerned about getting my information regarding my choices because information regarding politics can be biased or wrong sometimes. I want to be an informed voter in future elections when I can vote. I want to make sure I'm aware of what I'm actually voting for and understand what policies mean and how they will affect myself and others.
A friend and I were talking about how expensive everything feels, and they mentioned how the different candidates had plans for fixing it. This made me think that voting actually connects to my life for the first time. One issue I definitely want to say in is education. I care about what resources schools get and what programs are funded because these decisions affect people my age directly, and I want everyone to have the same or better opportunities that I did. No, I don't think young people fully understand the power of voting. I've heard people saying things like, my vote doesn't matter, even though a lot of elections are close. Many people, including me, also don't really understand the impact voting can have.
Many grow up in communities or in households that are very swayed to one side of the political spectrum, leading to a biased opinion. Some people live in cities and have city problems. Some people live in rural areas and have rural problems. The type of place the person is exposed to also affects how they prioritize problems in the nation. Protecting my rights is a big one. I personally don't want to get involved in anyone else's lives and just want to have the freedoms that I think I should have. A close second is improving my country. I don't want to live in a dysfunctional nation, and I'm sure if our society worked out better, people would be happier. Easier said than done, though. Do you vote for people you disagree with? Yeah, a candidate isn't going to share 100% of their views with you, but what is your limit? I'd ask them if they think they'd vote. If they wouldn't, I'd ask them why. Their answer would probably be why they don't care enough or that they don't think their vote matters. Then I'd try to convince them that many people think like them and that they have the power to voice their opinions and vote to fix the problems that they face. Growing up having a say in what I wanted, even if I didn't get what I wanted, allowed me to figure out the necessity of getting your opinion out there.
Throughout my research for this video, I learned that activists like Martin Luther King Jr. and Alice Paul faced heavy setbacks in order to fight for their right to vote. They faced things like heavy violence and hate for their actions, but still kept going, which shows me that the right to vote is a privilege because it was not always guaranteed to us, and that many people had to pay a high price in order to get it. I hope people remember that the right to vote was not always guaranteed for everyone, and not until recent history, everyone was guaranteed the right to vote. Another thing is that people should vote so that they get their voice heard.